when I clicked. My apologies. So we're recording now. Councilmember Strauss, it is your turn for 2 minutes. And you can look, by the way, in the tiny little thing up in the upper right-hand corner to see the timer in case that's helpful. Please go ahead.
I can see it, and because the recording just started, I will second everything my two colleagues just said.
Excellent.
Just to make that easy. So the things that are most impactful in District 6 really are fentanyl. There's a string of break-ins that we believe might be connected. I've been working with small business owners. I've been working with the chief, and so I'll be working with Captain Agard here shortly, and the mayor's office as well. So it's break-ins, it's fentanyl, and then what do we do about this? We do need more officers. We do need more alternatives, like the rangers that are in the park rangers that are currently in their academy right now and should be out by June. We need to get the care department ready to be expanded outside of downtown. And there's a couple programs that I work on in particular. I'll use my 2 minutes at the end to highlight all of the partners on this call that I work with. You know, we have case conferencing in Valley that's modeled off of Don Blakeney's program in the University District. Chandler and Wyatt are on this call as well. As far as Metro, I still am working to try to get I passed an amendment last year to put ambassadors on the bus so that we can make that a more safe environment. As your Sound Transit board member, I can tell you that I am very highly interested in the user experience there, working to make sure that, and we do at Sound Transit have more security officers and ambassadors. 2 minutes is very short. I will share with you, I'm at my district office right now. We have the Ballard Historic Society meeting at this very moment. During the pandemic, they reached out to me about their public safety concerns in front of the library and being able to meet. We have been working diligently over these 2 years, and it takes all of us. It's taken working with the libraries, FAS, parks, unified care team to make this space safer. And everything that I do in District 6 is not for just the district. In that same conversation with FAS and the library, I also brought up the Lake City Library, even though it's not my district. Case conferencing, we're working to get that expanded to a citywide model. I'm at my 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question, and this is for all of you to reply to. There is a tension between two obvious and often stated needs: to fund, recruit, and support our police, and to ensure they are well-trained and held to high standards of conduct and accountability. We understand proposed partial contract adds significant wage increases to help recruit and retain officers, and the mayor states that he is committed to building a police force that is representative of our community. These seem like positive moves forward. However, a lawsuit was recently filed by several senior and well-respected women officers detailing years of discrimination. According to the Seattle Times, SPD's official statement dismissed the claims as, quote, personal attacks, hearsay, and individual perceptions of victimhood. Clearly, you cannot comment on the lawsuit. However, the dismissive response from SPD leadership to what is an extremely serious matter is concerning. What is the role of the City Council in setting the standards and conveying the community's expectation that SPD leadership will be held accountable for maintaining a diverse and equitable workplace? And the first person to respond to that would be Mr. Strauss.
Thank you. Not speaking to that lawsuit or the situation before us, but if I was to speak to another situation where I heard something like this, my first reaction is to believe women and follow up on reports and make sure that there's an investigation, because if there is sexual harassment, there's discrimination. These things are not aspects of our police department that we want. It's not aspects of City Light that we want. It's not aspects of the Seattle Public Utilities. These are not aspects of a healthy work environment. As always, I think, I don't weigh in before investigations occur, and I would like to see the outcomes of those investigations. But in my personal life and in my professional life, I believe women, and we need to get to the root of it. I don't even need 2 minutes to tell you everything.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Moore.
Great, thank you. So what I can say is when we had our one-on-one 101 briefing with SPD on the Public Safety Committee, I brought to the attention of the 30 by 30 report and asked quite a number of questions about what was being done to address the issues that had been highlighted in that report. And I asked to have a response in 30 days. I did not receive a response in 30 days. On Monday, I sent a letter directed to Chief Diaz following up on that request and asking for specific discussion about what the implementation plan is. I'll also note that on Friday, when I read the article in KUOW, I reached out to my colleagues. I also reached out to the mayor's office and had a number of discussions about what was going to be done, that this was unacceptable, and that message needed to be communicated. And in particular, well, all of it was unacceptable, but also the public relations response from SPD was highly unacceptable. I continued those discussions with the mayor's office on Monday, and we saw a letter that went out yesterday. I also was in discussion with Councilmember Kettle as chair of public safety, and we will be issuing a joint press release tomorrow commending the mayor for the decision to hire a highly respected outside investigator and to conduct an investigation not only of the allegations, but also of the allegations relating to a toxic work culture and sort of what are the systemic issues that need to be addressed and how can they be addressed. And once we receive that report, I'm looking forward to working on those recommendations with my colleagues, both in the Public Safety Committee and then also at council at large. Our role is to call out the behavior and to hold people accountable. Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting again. I'll just add, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues and just say that our role as city council members is to hold staff accountable. And by the way, I think that across the city, our standards across the city, we need to be, hold folks accountable and be an exemplary city. And so in terms of, I agree, I don't sit on the public safety committee, but I attend most meetings because this is an issue that's really important to me. I agree with Councilmember Moore on the 30 by 30 report. I too want to know what actions the city, not the city, excuse me, SPD has taken to move forward on that. I will say our role is to continue to push the envelope on these issues and make sure that we are requiring accountability. And so without going into the specifics and really talking about what is happening, I will say that broadly, I support the accountability pieces. I too want to know what's happening with the 30 by 30 report. What action items have been taken as a consequence of that report, and then in general holding ourselves and our staff at the city, at SPD, and in all other places to the highest standards as we're delivering services to residents. I take that very seriously.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for one moment because you've all mentioned the 30 by 30 report, and I'm going to guess there might be some of our listeners who don't know what that is. Would one of you be willing to spend like 30 seconds saying what that is? Doesn't matter to me which one.
I was going to nominate Councilmember Moore.
That's all right.
And your letter this week was excellent. It's on my desk currently.
Great, thank you very much. So there is an initiative in SPD to hire 30% women law enforcement sworn officers by 2030. There was then a report done, I believe, through the UW, where a number of current serving female officers talked about basically a very toxic work culture, talked about potential allegations of sexual harassment, discrimination, and just a lot of obstacles to being able to be promoted. Childcare being one, and unwillingness to work with schedule flexibility, highlighted a really disturbing picture of an all boys club, and really no interventions being taken by leadership on that. So that's the gist of the 30 by 30 report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. For the next questions, rather than 2 minutes each, we suspect that you probably have some ideas in common. So what we'll do is we'll address the main question with 2 minutes to one of you, and then give each of the other 30 seconds after the first response to alter anything or add any additional comments. We'll start with Councilmember Rivera. Your question is, the city currently has a reported $240 million deficit. How could the city budget deficit affect public safety spending? And what current public safety spending is not or could be on the cutting table?
I don't know why I keep having trouble unmuting, but I have to
So
try
if
it
you
like
just-
3 times.
Yeah, if you don't mute yourself between, that's what will help. Just leave yourself unmuted. Go ahead.
myself
There you go.
Okay. All right, the $240 million deficit, this is something that I've talked a lot about. In terms of public safety spending, I do not support cutting from the public safety side, because we know it's our #1 concern in the city right now. Obviously, the mayor sends down the budget and then we review it. I'm interested to see how the mayor, what he will address in terms of public safety in the budget. We are just starting our budget conversation, so it's hard to say for me, to be honest, with certainty right now, what things I will want to myself even move forward. And like I said, we don't have anything to react to at the moment, but I will broadly say that because public safety, and most of you know that I decided to run to begin with because of the public safety issues in the city and the school shooting at my kids' school. Public safety is really paramount of importance to me as we're looking at the budget. And, I'm going to be looking to see what things we can forward via the budget to improve on the public safety side. Because, for instance, we are not able to hire all the officers that we want to at the moment. We're looking at alternatives. What would those alternatives be? And for instance, I will say, I would like to see some expansions of some programs on the public safety side, like the Unified Care Team, for instance. I don't know if that's being contemplated by the mayor's office, but it's something we've talked a lot about amongst ourselves as council members. And we've even said from the dais, and I definitely support the ability to expand services of that nature that I think are alternatives to public safety at the moment.
Okay, great. We're at time. And our next person on that, Dan Strauss, if you have anything to add.
I'm just going to keep riffing off of where Councilmember Rivera just was, is that we need 7-day unified care team service. We currently have Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and we do need to expand that service. So it's not just about cuts. Councilmember Rivera is my vice chair on the budget committee. It is the committee that I chair. She said it very well. Well, I'll say in 18 seconds is not just on public safety. It's the whole $240 approximate million deficit. We are auditing our budget right now. This has never been done in the last 25 years, according to central staff who have been here for 25 years. We started the select budget committee in April. It's running every month except for July from here until December, so that we can have a holistic view of where our dollars are being spent, so that we can create the highest level of service with the same amount of tax money.
Okay, and we're at time. Thank you. Councilmember Moore? And if you all three would leave yourselves unmute, then I won't have to ask you to unmute.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Great. I really don't have much to add. I do know that the city attorney's office has been asked to look at greater budget cuts than CARE and SPD. But again, we're going to need to see what's brought to us by the mayor. And I really want to commend Councilmember Strauss for overseeing basically the audits that so many of us talked about. And also Councilmember Rivera as vice chair and being very active in that process too.
Okay, great. Okay, our next question. And we'll start with Councilmember Moore, who can unmute herself again.
Sorry.
It's the technology that gets you every
The
time.
first time.
To what extent do you understand Seattle's current public safety initiatives receive significant federal funding? And if there were to be a change of leadership at the federal level this fall and that funding was eliminated, could Seattle go it alone? And you have 2 minutes, and then your council cohorts will have 30 seconds.
So I don't know the answer to how much federal money we get. And that's something that I obviously need to educate myself about. That's a huge piece. And I know there's federal money throughout all of the budget. And I'm imagining that Councilmember Strauss is going to be able to elucidate that a little bit more. I don't think we can go without federal money. We don't have enough federal money for all the other housing, social services, treatment. The federal monies are critical to the survival of our city as an equitable, habitable place to live, and they need to be doing more rather than less, and that applies to public safety as well.
Thank you. And next on that is Councilmember Rivera. And I'll ask you to unmute again. There you go.
Yes, I will add to Councilmember Moore's comments that my understanding actually is most of our public safety money is general fund, which is not federal funding. But so it shouldn't have an impact on our public safety initiatives. I will say though, in general, Councilmember Moore is correct. We get a lot of federal funding for various things. And so if we were not to get federal funding, then of course, a cut in one fund source has an impact on a different fund source. So then we'd have to look at general fund to plug any holes left from the federal, anything that the federal government is currently funding now that we would continue to fund. So it remains to be seen what, if any, on the federal side impact will happen. But in terms of public safety, it is very much general fund funded. So it really relies on what cuts we will make in order to preserve the public safety aspects of our budget.
And we are at time. Councilmember Strauss.
Yes, and so I can tell you that is a highly specific question. I can tell you that in our most recent grants acceptance ordinance, we did not have any. I do know that we've had grants in the past, and they are usually for very specific equipment or programs that are running on a regional way. And I see Councilmember Wu is also in attendance. She has been all over the city. Sorry, I guess I'm taking my time here. Just to say, the general fund is where we are funding our public safety. I don't foresee an issue, but it's something to keep our eyes on.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, now, next question, and we'll start this one with Councilmember Strauss with 2 minutes to reply, and then the others 30 seconds each. The public safety problems on Aurora and 99 are very well known. The impacts on the daily lives of residents and businesses in the surrounding neighborhoods is profound, and people are angry. Although located in North Seattle, Aurora attracts problems from around the city and the region. It's not just a North Seattle problem. What do you think are any key short-term actions the city could take to provide some immediate relief to these neighborhoods?
Katie, it's a great question, and I like that you asked Councilmember Rivera the budget question, and you asked me the Aurora question, because I don't want to steal Councilmember Moore's thunder here. Let me kind of describe the problem that as I see it, and Councilmember Moore is probably going to follow up with some more specifics, because what we have going on is some very organized criminal activity that is not just within the city, as you just mentioned. does cross state boundaries. And so it is my understanding, they won't tell me many details because they know I've got loose lips, that this SPD is partnering with federal organizations to address this. It is important that we stop human trafficking, we stop this organized criminal activity, and the issues of Aurora have been persistent for many decades. When I was growing up, the issues went all the way down to the Aurora Bridge with the Thunderbird Motel and others. And while it is in a smaller geographic area, it does feel more concentrated. And so this is something that we absolutely have to intervene in as far as the organized criminal activity, the alleged human trafficking. These are not things that have a place in our city or our society. And with that, I'm going to give my remaining 40 seconds over to my colleagues, because I think that I know that there are specific plans, and I'm not going to steal their thunder.
That's great. And so we will move next to Councilmember Moore. You can unmute yourself again.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that question. As it's such a complicated issue, and I have to be honest, there's no sort of easy solution to this, and every solution comes with its own problems and complication. I did host, as you know, the Public Safety Forum last week, and there was just tremendous amount of frustration in the public there was quite a lot of frustration around the issue of sex trafficking that's happening. And so there are a number of approaches to take to that. One is to re-implement the loitering for purposes of prostitution law. It's also not perfect. And any sort of direction in that way would have to be to utilize it simply as a tool of interruption and not as a tool of criminalization, because what we're dealing with is a victimized population. But there are other ways, and any approach to that would require bringing voices of all the stakeholders in to talk about that, and looking at a focused deterrence model. The other things that we need to do, I'm going to say this now, the mayor's office is not coming to the table on this, and they're not showing up in a way that they need to show up on Aurora. And I have reached out to their office to talk about this. And we as a council can't do it all alone. They are in charge of distributing the resources, right? And I know that SVD is doing their best with I think they have 2 vice officers, right? They need more vice squads. We need a more collaborative approach. As Councilmember Strauss mentioned, we've got some federal, FBI now, because it is at such a level now, the FBI, it has drawn the FBI's attention. So we need to be really bringing all of the stakeholders to the table and talking about how can we deal with this. We need to exercise our nuisance laws. We shut down 2 hotels with nuisance laws. We need to be doing more of that, looking at sort of civil ways to address the issue in addition to the others.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Rivera.
In addition to what my colleagues just said, I will say it was going to take many of the city departments working together to address what's happening on North Aurora as well. We need to make it, it's a neighborhood, it's not a highway, and right now that's how it feels. And so we really need to make it a neighborhood feel, because it is. My kids go to Ingram High School, which is right off of Aurora. At the border. It very much does not have that neighborhood feel. And so we need to work together with the city departments. What can we do? Even crossing Aurora, how can we implement ways to help people? I've heard from people who are saying to me, there are very few safe spots to actually cross on Aurora. We need to look at things of that nature. And I'm hoping that with the transportation levy, for instance, which I know has funding in it for crosswalks and things of that nature, that we can address these types of things, because we need to make it more of a neighborhood, in addition to obviously addressing all the public safety issues that my colleagues, Councilmember Strauss and Moore, just delineated. I support Councilmember Moore's ideas around the reinstating the loitering, because we do have a trafficking issue up on Aurora, and we have a drug issue, and we have the cars going too fast issue. So we need to work together to address these issues holistically.
And
Sorry.
we are at time. No, I appreciate it. We did allow a little more time on that because I will say, and Councilmember Strauss called out that I started with him, but I think part of what we actually want to hear by mixing it up to hear from all of you is we just don't think this is a North Seattle problem. And we'd really, I think, I'm just editorializing a bit here based on what's going on in our community, that I think what people in North Seattle want to hear is that the whole city understands that it's not just our problem and that the entire city is going to help us fix it. So thank you. Okay, moving on. I think we have time for one more question before we move into your open time. And again, I will tell people who are listening that because we started about 10 minutes late, we may end a little about 10 minutes late, but it's mostly North Precinct Advisory Council meeting business at the end. So if you don't want to stay after 8:30, you can leave. Okay. So the mayor and city council expressed support for increasing the number of police officers, but this will take time and more officers may not necessarily decrease crime rates. What other crime reduction solutions have you explored, if any? And we are starting with Councilmember Rivera. Okay, I'll unmute you. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, we do need some alternatives. I mean, one of the things, well, first of all, let me say a couple things about that. One is, you know, we've been encouraging my staff and I to have folks call 911. We're not accurately getting reporting on crime across the city because folks have a bit, and understandably so, given up. And so then but when people don't report crime, then we don't have accurate statistics, and that's really important. As I started with in this conversation, I'm trying to meet with residents and businesses, and I'm doing that neighborhood walk to hear from businesses and figure out ways that we can help them. For instance, SPD has a person, and I know Captain Agard's on this call, Sarah Lawson, who will go to a neighborhood community council and meet with them, or to a business and walk through people's business and tell them, you know, here are things you can address to mitigate for crime, for getting broken into. And I think a lot of residents, a lot of businesses don't know that that's available. That's a service that I think is helpful, and that is something we could plug people into as we're figuring out how to hire more police officers, for instance. I also think that, and I've said this for a long time now, we need to get young people involved in wanting to do this job. We don't have enough folks across the country that want to do this job, and we got to somehow figure out a way. So I've been talking to the Department of Education and Early Learning sits on my committee. And so I've been talking to folks about, are there opportunities? I know we did it with fire. Can we do something similar? I know it's more complex with police because, you know, it's the academy is statewide, but I mean, are there opportunities? The point is to get young people involved, maybe via the Promise program. But the point is we need to get more folks wanting to do this job, and we need to it's recruiting young people, and that's a separate issue from recruiting the actual officers that we can do now, right? Because recruiting young people to wanting these jobs, we need to start now. It's a long runway. And we need to find these other alternatives, like telling businesses and residents, here's how you can safeguard your home, for instance. And I feel fortunate SPD has that.
Okay, we are at time.
Service.
Thank
and
you.
Things like care and unified care team and expansion of those.
Okay, and an additional comment from Councilmember Strauss.
And can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Yeah.
The mayor and city council expressed support for increasing the number of police officers, but this will take time and more officers may not necessarily decrease crime rates. Right. What other crime reduction solutions have you explored?
That's great. So I'm going to talk about the program that Don Blakeney stood up that I'm trying to get in Ballard. And the reason that this is important is because it's working really well in the University District. we're doing okay in Ballard. There's some things that we need to increase, and we're trying to model this to be citywide. And so we focus on the 10 most impactful people in the community. The city has funded the Ballard Alliance Public Safe and Sound Coordinator, Wyatt Hoffman, who's on the phone right now with us. And the next step is to hire ambassadors that the city has funded. This helps us connect these most impactful people with social services. And we don't call the police and Megan Westfall to every single meeting to respect their time, but we also engage Megan and Officer Krazan and others as needed. It is really, I have a lot more to say, but I think that's my time.
Well, you'll have a little more time too. Councilmember Moore, 30 seconds.
Great. Have been in discussion with Chief Smith, as Councilmember Strauss has mentioned, about how getting upscaling to the 24 positions and also making sure that we can have them 24/7 on the weekends at least. So would like to get that in place as soon as possible. We are expanding the roles of community service officers so that they can take on a little bit more of the community work, which is going to be important for having that presence in the community. Also working with Sarah Larson and her colleague on helping people establish block watches and just taking on that idea. Love the idea of what Councilman Strauss mentioned. I'm going to be asking him about that tomorrow.
Great. Okay, and we are going to make time for one more question because I think it's a good one. Hang on. Got to get my timer reset, but I'm only going to give all of you 1 minute to answer it. We'll start with Councilmember Moore. So 1 minute, and then you'll have your open time after this question. How are you engaging underrepresented communities in your district to inform your public safety decisions? 1 minute. Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm really at the stage of doing my outreach, my public safety forum. I mentioned that in my newsletter. So I'm sending out a weekly newsletter, and in the hopes of getting, pretty good attendance at that. I've been working with Build Lake City Together, which is very much engaged in the Lake City community. And I've been doing work with them to try to reach out to various members of the community. I'm in connection with Lake City Collective, who are very much engaged in underrepresented communities in Lake City, really in District 5. But I do need, honestly, I do need to do more work in that outreach. And been working with the Interest Mosque as well to bring them into the conversation. So more to be done.
Okay, and now to Councilmember Rivera, same question. Oh, unmute. There you go.
Thank you. I've been engaging with the community, or we have residents at Magnuson Park who are living at Mercy Housing, and also Solid Ground has housing there for our low-income families at the park. And so we just a couple Fridays ago, my office hosted along with Seattle Parks and also King County Council member Dombowski, all working together. We hosted a teen night for the families at the park to hear from the families what their needs are and to talk about public safety. We've had issues with RVs at the park. I just did a ride along with UCT yesterday. We went to Magnuson Park. We've been in conversations about how can we make sure we're making the park safe for the families that are living there. Most parks don't have residents, and in our district at Magnuson, we do have residents.
And we are at time.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, so we are approaching the end, and now you each get some open time to just really speak to whatever else in North Seattle or Seattle Public Safety that you like. And we will start with Councilmember Strauss.
Thank you. I'll take just a minute to answer the underrepresented people question of.
Did I not
there's-
call on you? I
You
apologize.
didn't, but
Oh
it's
my gosh, well, you get 3 minutes then to answer that,
Okay.
plus you're open. I apologize.
No, you're totally fine. I mean, there's always better and more work to do. I do office hours every week. I also host town halls, and we're going to get back on the swing of that. And it's also working with my colleagues in other districts, and Councilmember Wu is a citywide elected official, because there are underrepresented people throughout the city. And while I'm elected by District 6, I serve the entire city. And so I'll just kind of say that there's always more work to do. And there's some very good collegiality going on overall at our city council, and getting to work with our colleagues has been a very great experience. I'm going to transition to my 2 minutes.
Please.
What I can say is that I can't do this work without many of the partners on the call. I see Megan Westfall's here, Officer Cruzan, Captain Agard, Wyatt Hoffman, Lisa Mannion, and Casey McNerthy. And Lisa, if the fun fact is, do you know which museum Casey McNerthy is quoted in a piece within the museum? That's a fun question for later. As well as Chandler in the mayor's office, who's doing a lot of work. And of course, Rudy. Couldn't do this work without you, Rudy. When I was reading the meeting minutes, I'd say that from our October meeting, my actions remain consistent. And while I can't talk about the contract, that's my statement. As I've talked about doing the public safety task forces in the past, we still have one going on in Greenwood. Got the opportunity to work with Officer Cruzan on it regarding a building on 85th, and he got the job done. I tried to help as much as I could, but it was him and Megan Westfall that really got the job done. Still working on a concerning vehicle that's out there. Ballard case conferencing is going well. There's still room for improvement, and I think that we're going to be working on that, and especially in the goal of having it expanded, an expandable and scalable project, so that other neighborhoods can enjoy it as well. I'm continuing to work in the industrial area. There are still some predators. It's hard to tell if they're housed or unhoused, but what is easy to tell is that they are predating upon both housed and unhoused people. You know, working with community members and departments, and my District 6 District Director, Amy Enbis, who's on this call, she is amazing, connecting everyday people with the departments who can meet their needs. And so if anyone here is in District 6 and needs some assistance, Amy Enbis goes above and beyond, and I really couldn't do any of this work without her. Beyond just my district, we're also working to get the waterway public safety report out. I see I have 6 seconds, so I'll just say that we're in a better place than we were 2 years ago. We've got a lot more to do.
Thank you very much. And our next person for an open 2 minutes is Councilmember Rivera. Hang on, let me unmute you. I know we're all used to muting ourselves. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. You know, I just want to start by saying that I very much value the relationship with Captain Agard, who I know is on this call. Captain Agard has been so responsive every time that we've reached out when we've had an issue in the district. And of course, her folks at North Precinct are really terrific and very responsive as well. And I have found the Sarah Lawson, I mean, we've heard really great feedback in our office from folks that Sarah's been able to help in the ways that I was talking earlier. I also will say I've met with some of our regional partners like King County Councilmember Dombowski and Garmai. Zahalehi, and I also met with the Sound Transit folks to talk about, because we have 3 light rail stations in the district, to talk about public safety on the light rail, because we want to make sure as people are riding, and we want to encourage people to utilize light rail, that they feel safe. So wanted to say that as well. Also have been having conversations about public safety issues involving minors. You know, there's been a lot of car racing, and then there's been some stealing of cars to commit crimes that small businesses have also had issues with. And so we've been dealing with that. And we've been trying to be really responsive to residents and small businesses when they've had crime happen, to make sure that we are plugging them in, making connections to SPD, having conversations about what the needs are, plugging them with the Office of Economic Development to see how the Office of Economic Development can provide some assistance as they're navigating these situations in the district. And
Okay,
so,
and we are at time.
great.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and Councilmember Moore, it is your time.
Great, thank you very much. So I too wanted to note that I have implemented regular district hours. I have district hours every Thursday afternoon, first Saturday of the month, and every other Wednesday evening. And so that really is just to be available to whoever wants to come and talk about whatever's going on. And in terms of like the public safety piece, the other really important piece to that is housing. It's shelter and affordable housing, and that's certainly something that's on my priority list as chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee. So we just extended the MFTE through the end of the year. We're going to be looking at a reauthorization of that. We're also looking at mandatory housing affordability. How do we get the most out of that? The comp plan. How do we create a comp plan that maximizes the amount of variety of affordable housing throughout the city. The other thing that's really important to me is increased shelter. I think the tiny house villages are working very well. We need to expand that strategy. We also need to get a seasonal shelter in District 5. Severe weather shelter is insufficient. And it's usually too far away. So, talking to Lake City Partners and other people about how do we get a seasonal shelter, working to revamp RHA so that it actually works better. One of the things I'm really focused on is how do we do hyper-local within a regional model. One way that we do that is by expanding the UCT teams, and I'm looking to do that, but also expanding the initial outreach. And then having places for people to go. Obviously, that's a critical piece. The other thing we're doing around Aurora is we're working with SDOT to find ways to change the infrastructure up there between 101st and 109th to reduce gun violence. So street calming measures, street plazas, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. We know this is a very busy time and we really appreciate it. The North Precinct Advisory Council really is here to try and foster communication and keep people talking and sharing information. And we want our members to be educated about what's going on so that when we talk with our elected leaders, we already know quite a bit about what's going on and it can be a meaningful conversation. So we appreciate you all taking the time. And with that, we are going to proceed on. We're going to let you all off the hook and out of the spotlight. And as I let you go, Captain Agard is up next. So.
And Katie, I just want to say thank you for having us. It's actually really nice to have all three North End representatives together and just, again, highlighting that of all of the citywide electeds I've ever worked with, I have never seen somebody in District 6 as much as I've seen Councilmember Wu. It's just been really incredible to see her serving, rooted in Chinatown International District and truly serving our entire city as CIAT.
Well, that's great. We are all counting on all of you. So thank you all very much. Have a great evening and let me get you all unspotlighted and then we will bring on Captain Agard, who really loves being in the spotlight. I know, don't you? There you are. Hang on, let me unmute you or ask you to unmute. Are you able to unmute? Okay, hang on. Let me just shift. Give it a try now. There you go.
There we go.
Okay,
You're on.
green here. Okay. Well, thank you. That was awesome listening to the council members. And I just want to say that they've been awesome coming to roll calls, doing ride-alongs. And I think that's one of the best things we can do for SPD recruitment right now is to know that SPD is supported. And I know it's giving the officers hope, and they do recruitment of people they know too. So thank you very much. And I know Boo and Kettle have all been to roll call and done ride-alongs too. So they're always talking about what they can do, and I know they're working hard. So I just really appreciate them. All right, so I'll give you a few stats here. Overall, year to date, crime is down 5% for the North Precinct. And in the last 28 days, it's gone down 13%. And that's looking at violent and property crime. Looking at just violent crime, it's up 16% for the year and about the same percentage about for the last 28 days. For that category, homicides are down, so that's kind of bringing the percentage down. Rape, robbery, and aggravated assault are up year to date and the last 28 days. Looking at shots fired, it's up 25% for the year, but it's gone down 18% in the last 28 days. So citywide, it's up citywide, but it's gone down in the last 28 days. So hopefully that trend stabilizes or decreases as we get into the spring and summer months, when historically we see an uptick in those. Shots fired year to date for the North End, we've had 50 shots fired, with 14 of those being non-fatal and 1 fatal up at 105 in Aurora there. Property crime is down 8% for the year and down 16% for the last 28 days. Arson and motor vehicle thefts are the 2 categories within the property crimes that are still higher now than they were last year. Couple of things I kind of want to talk about. I know our staffing is still not good on SPD. I think everybody knows that. So a couple of things that department-wide that the chief is trying to do to increase our ability to fight crime is he just instituted, he did it last year, but he put it in early this year, just last week, is the Community Violence Task Force. I know I did hear someone talking about federal partners. So this task force, it's going to focus on violent offenders that are committing multiple crimes within the city. So they're going to target them with our federal partners, detectives, as well as prosecutors, and all work together to try to investigate, arrest, and then prosecute and put these violent, high-profile offenders in jail. So that's started last week. That's going to go on until the end of the summer. Another thing that I know we've done, it's some of it just started today, was we're reprioritizing calls, meaning we're taking some historically priority 1 calls and making them priority 2, or maybe even sometimes 3, but reprioritizing these calls so we save the priority 1 calls for immediate life safety calls, because some of the calls that we looked at shouldn't have been priority 1 calls, and we're taking up officer time. So that has gone into effect. We're also expanding reports that can be taken over the phone. Like we take, I don't know the number offhand, but hundreds and hundreds of auto theft reports where an officer has to respond and to the location. And now we're able to take those over the phone. And we've expanded our iTrue, which is our report writing unit, to accommodate this new system where more reports can be taken over the phone. And that way, that's going to free up officers on the street to have more time to where they're not running as much from call to call, and they can be up on Aurora and, you know, do their own, you know, deterrence investigation and do more proactive police work. I know we're also looking at getting partnerships with other jails instead of just King County, so we can actually book more people. I know King County Jail doesn't take most misdemeanors. And we also get a lot of medical declines there where we have to take them up to the hospital and have officers sit on them for hours and hours after they tell us they've ingested drugs. We have to take them up there. So we're working with a couple other jails in the area to be able to book people into jail more. One of them is SCORE down in Renton area. So a lot of stuff has been going on to try to, even with our short staffing, to try to make things better, to give officers more time on the street to be proactive. I did a deep dive with our data looking at crime overall from 85th to 145th, because I was just curious, you know, pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID, and looking at pre-COVID and then COVID, it has not, crime rates along that strip have not returned yet to pre-COVID crime rates. So it's still up. So I thought maybe it had gone down a little bit, but it's still up from pre-COVID. I think that's all I got. I know Megan Westfall will talk a little bit about the hotels and how that's going. That's I won't steal her thunder, but I know she'll give a little update on that. Yeah, that's what I got. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Let me see if we've got anything in the chat. If you have questions, folks, put them in the chat. Well, I think you really, this was really during the panel, but it's a question about resolving the drugs and shootings and prostitution on Aurora. And I think you've touched on that. Maybe you could just, you know,
Yeah.
what is being done.
Yeah, and you know, I have heard it, someone brought it up that we really do only have 2 people in our vice unit. And I do know that they do work with federal partners, and I think that is going to uptick more, working with them, and that's priceless to get them in here. I was just talking to one of our vice detectives, and what I didn't realize is that when they're working Aurora trying to investigate, the amount of time they spend with when they pull a victim off, like they went up to get an underage victim about a week ago, and the amount of time they have to spend with that victim, I mean, it's crucial because they're traumatized, and they have to get them, you know, unplug them and get them services, get them back home or to a shelter. They do that piece of it. I didn't even think about it, but they spend a lot of time with those victims. So we really do need, I mean, when we can, expand that unit and work with our federal partners on that. I would love to get, you know, an emphasis back up there, but we just don't have the staffing. I know officers would like to get up there and do the work too. We used to have the overtime emphasis up there every night, like 5 nights a week, and officers loved that detail, but we just don't have the staffing right now to do those emphasis patrols like we'd like to. But we do have, I do put out 09 cars when we have staffing on Aurora, and their job is to not respond to calls, but just be up there and do what they can do to deter the crime on Aurora. So that's, yeah, with our numbers, hopefully it's going to get better and I can do more.
Okay. One question that is here is, let's see.
I saw a question about the bike patrol. Yeah. So we were, yeah. So they're right now, they took the bikes and they're doing repairs on them. Because I was just going to put them out a couple weeks ago, and then they took them. I'm waiting for the bikes to get back from, I know it sounds silly, but from the shop, from the tune-up to get them out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is the plan. They will be out there.
Then we have Ultima on Aurora is frequently a shoplifting target, $500 to $1,000 per incident. It's just a comment, but I guess probably the question that's implicit is there some kind of emphasis on that area of businesses for Aurora, or?
I missed where,
I believe it says ULT, but I think that probably means the Ulta on Aurora. Isn't there an Ulta in that shopping area of 130th on Aurora, I think?
yeah, I think they moved from Northgate, right? I think, yeah,
Probably, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
and
it did say he meant the Ulta.
yeah, that one, and then, you know, like Lowe's and Home Depot, they get hit really hard. Our community response team is called CRG. They do those kind of things when they're not doing like demonstrations and search warrants. They're like our citywide ACT team, and they do those. I've asked them to come up, and they said they would, so I need to follow up and see when they can get up here and do that, because we don't do it at the precinct level anymore because of staffing.
Okay. Somebody is asking, what authority do the private policing and security agencies have? Can they detain someone until an SPD officer arrives?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely can detain someone if they've committed a crime. I think different security places have their own rules and regulations on what they allow their employees to do. So I'd have to know which one, but I know a lot of the ones that work like the stores, they detain them until you know, like we get there, or they'll trespass them and do their own civil notices as well. But they can detain. I know a lot of them are good witnesses for us, but they're excellent to have.
Okay. We have kind of a general comment, I think, about enforcing parking and loitering, SMC regulations over 72 hours, RPZ with a permit or zero permit, expired tabs, no license. I think the gist of that question, if you can see it, is just comments and are those things being followed up on?
I mean, that would be our more of our parking enforcement. I know there was an issue at with the parking and the loitering up at Sugars around 103rd between 105th, right in the Oak Tree parking lot. And that was kind of people were hanging out, the pimps were hanging out there, and there was like some certain parking areas. So we did meet with Sugars along with the prosecutor's office, Megan Westfall. And we met with the owners and told them our concerns, and I'll let Megan talk about maybe that when she comes up. But that was very helpful in getting the parking changed in front of Sugars there, and having them not hang out there. So we can do some at that level, but most of it is the parking enforcement officers that do that.
And I think one more before we switch over to Megan. And I think both Megan and the King County Prosecuting Attorney Lisa Mannion, who's also on tonight, probably can address a couple of these others that are in here that I think people thought they were addressing to you, but I think they might be better for answering them. But one of the questions, and this is probably especially with summer coming up, is what about the car racing in the Aurora area? It's quite alarming.
When they,
racing?
yeah, I know there was one up at like was on 45th.
Captain Agar, do you want me just to take over now and take over all those questions?
Are you want to answer the car racing
well,
as well?
Yeah, I think
hang on just a second, Nate.
Okay.
We can switch to you. Is there anything else that you had to update us about, Captain?
No, I think that was it. I think that was it. But yeah, the car racing, I know that they are giving training to officers, and
Great.
and I know the prosecutor's office is assisting us with
Indeed,
that.
yeah.
So I'll let Megan talk about that too.
Okay, so with that, we will thank you very much and remove your spotlight. And if you'll just hang on a moment,
Yeah.
we will get you highlighted, Megan.
Okay.
We are, as I told everybody, I know we're a little off time, but it's just trying to sort of shift it all and get everybody their time. So Megan
Sure.
Westfall.
Yeah. So I was actually going to give some kind of prepared remarks about our annual report, but in the essence of time and answering some of these other questions, I will just put that into the chat and people can peruse it at their leisure. So I'll kind of go backwards from the questions that were posed. So the one about the car racing, yes, we're very aware that car racing is a problem, not just on Aurora, but throughout the city. The legislature actually just changed the RCW to give law enforcement a lot more tools. Traditionally, racing was what you think of, two cars speeding up against each other. Now they've included other categories like drifting. So when they're kind of doing the donuts and stuff like that, they've made it more clear that law enforcement absolutely has the authority to impound the vehicle included or that's been used for the racing. And one of the more important things that the legislature included was anyone who's aiding and abetting in the car racing is also guilty of racing as an accomplice to that crime. Because often what we see in these situations that tend to kind of get out of control is you have the racers, but you also have people that are using their cars and using people to block off streets and whatnot, and really making it inaccessible for law enforcement to even get there. And so now they have the ability under the racing statute to arrest those people for that crime. They can also impound their vehicles, which is a new tool that they have been given, and hold them for a period of time. They can go so far as to civilly seize the vehicles and forfeit them to the police department. So there's a lot more tools that SPD and other law enforcement agencies now have as a result of this legislative change. It was new from January of 2024. So everyone's kind of still digesting it, trying to figure out how we're going to be using this. As Captain Agard mentioned, we're in the process of coming up with some advice for the police department, and then working with officers about how to implement the changes in the law and kind of some proactive strategies. So something it's on everybody's radar, especially with the summer months coming, getting warmer and whatnot. So definitely looking into that, and hope to have some good strategies there. I think there were some other questions. Now I'm going to forget them. There was one question about, we want to jog my memory. There was a question about the motels, or Captain Agar brought up the motels. There's really not a lot of an update there. As most of you probably know, they were closed down pursuant to the chronic nuisance statute, closed for about 6 months. They've been allowed to reopen after passing inspection. And as far as we know, there isn't any activity in the motels. We realize there's activity around the motels and in the Aurora corridor, but the motels themselves, the two that were deemed chronic nuisance properties, we haven't heard of any issues there. They do have 24-hour security that's through a licensed and bonded company. So we do believe that's probably why we aren't seeing a lot of activity there. Captain Agard also brought up sugars and what we did there. And this kind of pairs nicely with what I think it was Councilmember Moore was talking about, using SDOT and kind of some proactive strategies in that area from 101 to about 109 on Aurora, where we do see a lot of issues with loitering and quite frankly, a lot of shots fired. So we did meet with the owners of Sugars and their attorney, and we had quite a few people from SPD present, discussed a lot of the concerns that we had about the violence in the area. One thing that was brought to our attention was that vehicles were, in the just parking in the road there, and were able to stay there based on the parking regulations. And that was creating some issues with people coming to and from Sugars, most likely involved in the violence and in the human trafficking. And so we worked with SDOT to impose a 3-minute load unload zone. And so that was helpful because obviously people couldn't stay there long. And then also if they did stay there long enough, we were able to, that's a tool that SPD then has, that they can approach the driver and ask them to move along, get identification and things like that. So I think those were the big ones that Captain Agar brought up or were addressed to her. Are there any other questions? I'm seeing a question directly to me.
I think the rest are probably King County prosecuting attorneys, but would you just reference one more time? You did have something prepared. Just reference it again and what.
Yeah. So at the behest of the city charter, the city attorney's office has to do an annual report every year where we kind of lay out the accomplishments of the office and whatnot. It goes through all of the different sections. So there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't really touch on criminal law because we obviously have a huge civil side, but there is a lot in there that touches on what our criminal division is doing. And so I was going to highlight some of that stuff, but instead I will just plop the report in the chat and people can go through it and read it. And if you have questions after the fact, you can feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, and we will certainly include that as a link in our minutes from this meeting. And it'll be part of the recording, of course. Thank you, and thank you for your flexibility waiting as we shifted the schedule just a tad.
Yeah.
And next, I am very pleased to say we have with us Lisa Mannion, who I'm going to highlight. Casey has been delightful to have. We really appreciate that you have had him meet with us. It's really valuable to have him give us updates. He's been very responsive and we appreciate that. But we're thrilled to have you here. So we're off schedule, so take a little time.
Okay, no, I'm thrilled to be here and I will try to meet Casey's standards. Casey's on vacation. We do occasionally let him take time off. And to answer the Dan Strauss trivia question, I believe Casey has a quote in the Museum of History and Industry in Mohi. And if memory serves me, I think it's related to World War II blackouts. So you can ask him when he reappears next month. Casey is just a treasure trove of facts and trivia about the Seattle King County area. There was a question in the chat earlier about juvenile crime, and it was kind of like a perfect setup. It's almost like we planned this because one of the things I intended to address tonight was the things that we are doing in the prosecuting attorney's office to address juvenile crime. So there has been increased reports and focus on juvenile crimes. And juvenile crime, we are seeing an uptick, but we still are not at pre-pandemic levels, which I still take it to mean that our partnership with law enforcement, the partnership with community on effective diversion programs for nonviolent crimes is still having an overall impact benefit for King County. The three things I'm going to talk about are J-Watch, our Safer School strategy, and then our juvenile data dashboard. So J-Watch is an initiative that we launched in February. It is a close collaboration with all law enforcement in King County. It is designed to meet our shared goals of keeping our community safe, decreasing recidivism, and bringing clear accountability for juveniles who commit criminal acts that cause harm. J-Watch is a dedicated time when any law enforcement officer in King County can join senior level prosecutors from my office to share and seek information on juvenile suspects. It has been really helpful. We offer either case development assistance or assistance with warrants. We answer questions. Sometimes it's just nice to give state case updates and status updates on pending cases. There are some things that we know that law enforcement can do that really makes an impact when we present cases to our juvenile judges as it relates to detention decisions. So far, that initiative has had a lot of early success. Working closely with SPD, we're able to solve a number of high-profile crimes involving some prolific and high-impact juvenile suspects, including one who's suspected of murder. So we are going to keep that, and we continue to spread the word that every law enforcement officer in King County is welcome to join that dedicated line. We meet Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. The other initiative that we launched earlier this year is called the Safer School Strategy. We launched that initiative in January. It is led by a senior deputy prosecuting attorney named Jamie Kivestat. Jamie has outstanding relationships with every single one of our school districts in King County. A lot of people do not realize that our state's truancy dropout prevention laws play out in juvenile court. So we have long been in the business of keeping kids in school. And in doing that, it's a protective factor. And it's kids who drop out of high school are much more likely to enter the criminal justice system. So Jamie had this wonderful idea that we could work with school districts and leverage those relationships to share information. Right now, when juveniles come to our facility and when juveniles are either charged with a crime, sometimes they are released back into the community and are ordered to go to school. Sometimes juveniles are charged and they serve their sanctions and then they still go back to school. But we are able to share information with the school districts and school district leadership and connect those leaders with probation counselors so that we can together plan to have a safe return to school for the juvenile and for the school community. Again, it's showing a lot of really early success. There have been services offered to at least 30 students. And so far, the school districts are reporting like very good results from that. And then the final thing is on March 1, we went live with a brand new juvenile data dashboard that reports on all juvenile crime cases referred, our filing decisions, the disposition standards, how many cases are diverted. And this is just kind of an addition to our adult data dashboard, which is public facing on our website that we launched back in 2021. It's really important to me that we share information with the community that we serve and that the work of the prosecuting attorney's office is both understood and that the decision-making of the office is understood. So those are three things that we are doing to address juvenile crime. I also, while we're on the line, I saw that Don Blakeney was here and Captain Eggard is here. And I just want to say thank you to Don. Earlier this year, he brought together leaders from the prosecuting attorney's office, city attorney's office, mayor's office. Captain Eggard was there. We did a business walk, met with business owners in the U District, and it was really helpful. And it was also an important way to open up lines of communication and share information and to reassure our business owners that we are taking crime seriously. There was a question in the chat about organized retail theft. I do have a dedicated prosecutor in the prosecuting attorney's office that addresses all retail crime. We do regularly meet with the security personnel for all of our major retail chains in the state of Washington. We're also a partnership with the Retail Industry Leaders Association to address retail crime. So we do take that seriously and we regularly charge retail crime. Were there other questions? It seems like I'm missing.
I think you
one.
answered one in the chat, but somebody asked about whether King County was planning to keep the juvenile detention center open.
Yes, they are. There's no, the juvenile detention center is not closing.
Great. Well, I think that is it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight.
Really good to be with all of you. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you very much.
Bye.
And with that, I'm going to just kind of wrap up. And at first, I do want to thank you all. It's always very challenging to manage a panel type situation and take people on and off mute. So I appreciate your tolerance for my Zoom skills. Did my best. I want to remind folks that in case you too one day want to stand here and run a Zoom meeting or in person, I don't feel I need to hold this office for life. So we are at the point in the year where we take nominations for the coming year board. And that closes tonight at 8:30. If you're on our email list, you got information back in April. We told you that was coming. We sent out more specifics on Monday in an email. It's a very simple process to say you're interested. You send an email to us by about a minute from now to the email just to say you're interested and which position you're interested in joining or in applying for. And then we can send you the rest. So all you have to do is say you want to do it. And then we'll send you the information. The voting for those positions, because I'm sure there will be an onslaught of people who want to apply for every position. The voting actually occurs in June. We will get statements from each person who says they want to hold a role or be on the board. And we will send those out via email a couple weeks ahead so that you can read it. And if you appear in person at the in-person June meeting, those attending that meeting are the people who vote on next year's officers and board. And you have to be eligible, which means you're a resident or you own a business in the north of Seattle, which is served by the SPD North Precinct. So with that, send those emails in. And let's see if I have anything else that I have missed. I think I haven't. And my gosh, we're only at 8:32. So again, thank you all. I thought this was a very interesting meeting. We're glad you all attended. We'll have the recording and the minutes up soon. And we hope we will see you in June in person. And again, we'll be at Epic Life Church on 105th and Stone, so you can come and make some good connections to other folks. So thank you all, and we now stand adjourned. Oh, and do become a Facebook friend. I think we're at 99 followers. We want to get to 100 and we want to surpass it. So please like us on Facebook. So thank you all very much, and this meeting is adjourned. And if the board members